This is Dr. Jerry Jaffe, and welcome to the Comical Heathen. It's been a couple months since our last episode, sorry for the delay. Lately I've been busy directing a play and doing some other work, but this holiday season should provide me with some time to get some more episodes up. And I am particularly excited about this episode, delay or no delay. I stopped into Big Tommy's, a comedy club in suburban Detroit, where I met up with my good friend Chili Challis. Known especially for his work as a writer for Jay Leno and The Tonight Show, Chili's a touring headliner, based now in Michigan, where he also runs his dojo, mentoring comedians of every skill level. Anyway, in his own act, he doesn't usually do much satire or politics, so I asked him why. We also talked about writing for Jay Leno, who is famously not edgy, especially on The Tonight Show. Along the way, Chili gives some of his experiences and opinions of some comedy greats like Richard Pryor, Bill Hicks, and also Will Durst. After my interview, I will give you an update from the Rabbit Hutch. The Jaffe family has a new addition I'm eager to tell you about. And also, I'm going to give you my reaction to a newspaper article I found on the alternative medicine practice of salt rooms. So hang around for that. Hey, make sure you like us on iTunes and leave us a friendly comment. Anyway, next is my interview with Chili Challis. Welcome to the Comical Heathen. I'm your host, Dr. Jerry Jaffe. This is the podcast where we talk about the ins and outs of religious satire. And here to help me out tonight is my good friend, comedy writer, comedy coach, and touring headliner, Chili Challis.
I do a lot.
You do a lot.
Of stuff. And now a film star.
Star.
So I actually got a part in a little movie, a little film short, and I had lines. And
Excellent.
So play an old Vietnam vet. So
Okay.
Kind of look at me.
That makes sense.
So, yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
We'll include a photo of Chili on the web page for this, so make sure you look up so you know what Chili looks like.
Yeah. I'm known as Uncle Hippie. That'll tip you off to anything. Hashtag Uncle Hippie.
I often see you when you're performing wearing tie-dye, so today you're wearing a different hippie shirt.
I am, yeah. It's got the little peace symbol on
Yes.
it, man. So this marks me right now. I think there's neo-Nazis out there looking for the peace symbol to beat people up and stuff.
Right, so let people know where you stand.
Yes. Put yourself in danger. That's what the hippies were all about.
So on this podcast, I just like to get people's insights or vibes about religious satire. Now just people will know if they don't know. I've known you for many years. I've seen you perform many times. Occasionally have the honor of performing with you.
Oh, my goodness.
I only mention that besides in the spirit of full disclosure, but to say, having seen your act many times, I wouldn't think religious satire right off the bat when I think about this kind of material you do.
No.
Is there a reason for that or a feeling about that?
It can be tough.
Mm-hmm.
It can, I tried to build an act. I was kind of a child of the comedy clubs.
Sure.
I was born in that boom.
Right.
The early 80s, 80, 81, and there was a new club every week. So
sure.
I learned quickly that you kind of had to be careful in the Bible Belt and everywhere. Not just, you can't blame the Bible Belt, everywhere, that if you brought up anything religious, it was kind of, I just wanted to keep my stuff just kind of fun and non-controversial.
Okay.
But honestly, if I'd have thought of something really funny, I would have jumped into it. I used to do a bit about sleeping and having nightmares, or you wake up and you think you're in heaven, and you're like, hey, I think I'm in heaven. I think, is that Hitler? Oh, hell. It was a really cheap joke, but, got the point across, got to laugh. So.
Well, something I heard Bill Maher say is that when he was maybe going through a similar, like his early days as a comedy club comedian, if he did religious jokes, it was very, lighthearted, almost like kidding jokes.
Yeah, stuff that everybody would laugh at, so you just have to be careful. And it's sometimes it's the people that don't even read the Bible. They just hear the name Jesus and think you're making fun of something just because you brought it up and it's in a comedy club, so.
In your coaching sessions, do you come across many writers or comedians who struggling with how or whether or not to do religious satire or satire?
Yeah, there's actually a lot of them. There's people that they're in that niche, if you want to say. They do comedy in churches and things like that, where you have to be ultimate, you have to be very clean.
Sure.
And you have
but
to
not satire, but that's more of a Christian comedy.
Yeah, not satire. No, you don't. I have people ask me for coaching on that, and basically I tell them they gotta watch it. That's all, especially if you're in Here in the Bible Belts and some places down south, it's a little tighter.
Right.
You know, so.
Well, I once got the advice from someone that if you're in the middle of a bit and it's just not working, you have to learn how to get off the bit as quickly as possible.
Yeah, you know what? And that's easier than you think it is. You know, a lot of these kids think, oh man, you know, kids are all 40, you know, in comedy right now, but that's kids to me. They think it's really hard to change, but honest to God, it's easy to go, well, I thought this was funny, but thank you for trying it out. I'll switch gears here. What else is there going on?
Something I don't like, and you never see pros or headliners do this. This is more open mic or local comedy scene. Someone does something, could be satire, religious satire, even just like anything edgy, or they perceive as edgy, and it doesn't get a laugh. The next move is to blame the audience. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, you're not smart enough for that joke, or
yeah. You know what? I try not to do that.
Yeah.
Honest to goodness, I try to blame myself.
Right. What's the only way to get better?
And it's really hard to blame the audience and then have them still like you.
Right.
You know, I have watched comics do a total flip out on a heckler, and they might even be correct at the time, but they will break that fourth wall.
Right.
They will be this nasty person. They will be throwing F words at this poor schmuck, and then go back to like, okay, so the other day my dog and they've lost it.
Right.
But they don't seem to grasp that happens, you know.
Chili, another famous stop on the Chili Challis journey was being a writer for the Jay Leno and the Tonight Show.
Correct. Yeah.
When did you do that? Like what years approximately?
I started immediately as soon as I found out that he was interested in having writers fax him jokes. And so I grabbed a hold of him really quick in '92. Okay. And he offered me a chance to send in jokes to the show, and I simply wrote my way on the show. Okay. I was fanatical. I was obsessed with it. I mean, in those days, I had to carry my own fax machine. Oh my goodness. Which, you know, were as big as a truck, and you know, I mean, and you do these one-nighters. I'd have to move into a hotel room, bring copiers, fax machine, my word processor, which was as big as a Volkswagen in those days. But I would do that. I would do that at every gig, and I'd watch religiously. I would watch the Tonight Show every night. I'd record the sets and do a show, run out of the show, run back to the hotel room, check it out. And I did that from like 92 until in the mid-90s. He finally just called me up like Jay loves to do. And he's like, hey, I cleaned out a broom closet. That should be an office space. You want a job? And I'm like, oh, yes, I do, please. So
was that the first time Jay Leno ever called you? Have you talked to him before that?
It's pretty close. He invited me up to Chicago once. They took the show on the road, and they did a theater in Chicago. And he knew that was a little closer to me, so he invited me in for the day, and I wrote with the staff. And I had a feeling I was pretty close. Sure. To being hired.
So you met him then?
Yeah, I met him then. That was a huge thing, and it was a good thing.
So one of the things that, especially in the context of like the late night wars, he was seen as less edgy and a little more like comfortable for middle America.
He was. I mean, that was by choice. There was. We always used to say there were two Jay Lenos. Okay. There was the guy that put on the suit for the show, and there was a guy that wore the denim all day. You know, and it really was. The guy that wore the denim all day could be very edgy, toss the F word around. He would never forget if you made one mistake. He was always on you. Right. But there was this nice guy out there performing for middle America at night. So it was by choice. He knew the line he wanted to walk, and that was it.
So I'm going to guess on a nightly basis there wasn't much call for religious satire. I mean, he would do the news of the day satire. Right. Yeah, we didn't do a lot of stuff. That often would get rejected, so writers just wouldn't spend a lot of time, you know, because you had to send in paper, and he would look at a joke and he'd put a little dog print by it if he liked it. Okay. Which meant he was going to use it for the show. Okay. So being dogged by him, because his production company is Big Dog Production. Okay. So if you saw that little footprint by your joke, you knew the joke was at least being considered for the show. Because it would go from that to little 3x5 cards that he would carry around all day. And him and Jimmy Brogan, another writer, would just sit and look at these things, and they would get it down to 25 for the show. Right. So as long as I have a chance to pick your brain about it, I do want to ask you, would sometimes go along with the jaywalking crew?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. I was often picked for that.
What was that scene like? Like, what was a day of jaywalking like?
Really, we stood on a street corner and we had our question for the day, and oftentimes the writer that came up with the question would be the one that would go along with Jay. We usually had like 2 writers. Right. And generally just stopping these people and asking them the question, which, and it was a fun thing, but it was difficult because you had to think really fast. Right. We would stand off camera, where Jay could see us, and we had kind of big blue cards, and and a pen. And while he was talking to the person, if we thought of a good question, we'd write it real quick and hold it up. And if you ever noticed, you'd see Jay's eyes kind of go to the left. He was reading the card, and then it made him look like he was fine. Even though he was very good at it, too. Of course. It was nice to be able to have that. It was very immediate. So I was actually the one that put Kid Rock on television for the first time.
Really? How did you manage that?
He was just there. He showed up. We were on Melrose Avenue, and I looked down the street, because that was kind of our job, too, to be the barker, to get people that were interesting and looked like they'd be fun on camera. Yeah, sure. Here come this guy in the top hat with these 2 just hottie chicks, and I was like, Jay, we got to get that guy. And he's like, hey, get him. And sure enough, that's how he said his name. We got him on camera, and Jay said, what's your name? And he goes, Kid Rock. And typical Jay's like, so your parents are Mr. and Mrs. Rock? And he's like, yeah, something like that. So the bottom line was, he did such a great job, we made him the star of the show. Which meant he got the most time. And afterwards, he was so happy with it, he handed me his CD, which I immediately tried to give away. Right. Because, who knew? We didn't know who this guy was. Like, Kid Rock, anybody want this? And nobody really did, so I kept it. Now it's like a prize to me, And
if you walk around the streets of L.A., people are handing you CDs.
Yeah, they are. They scripts.
It's worse than religious pamphlets.
Oh,
They're just constantly handing out CDs.
Yes. Lots of scripts float around and stuff. So, but anyway, that's how we got him. We get all kinds of interesting people on the show like that. So it's always fun.
Back when we were young.
Well, yeah, 80 years ago.
80 years ago, were there any comedians who were influences on you?
You know what? I loved everybody. Mm-hmm. I swear to God, I loved comedy. Right. I don't care, slapstick. I loved observation. I grew up like Alan King and Jack Benny and Bob Hope, but at the same time, I loved political comics, Mort Saul, Lenny Bruce. He was just going out as I was starting to become aware of stand-up. Right. I love comedy in general. I've had mimes and magicians make me laugh. But as far as influences, obviously Steve Martin in that crazy world that he could just suck you into. Right. And Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor was a major influence on me, because the guy could keep it real, but at the same time he could turn around and do fantasy. And you'd go along with him. And not a lot of comedians have that ability. Right. If they keep it real, that's it. But he had an ability to talk about a German Shepherd talking to him. Yes. And then go right into drug addiction and, prostitutes and heart attacks and, amazing things. So those 2 definitely were.
Is there anyone from your early days or your upbringing that did religious satire well? That you would point at and go, well, that's a guy who knew how to do religious satire?
Will Durst out of San Francisco was kind of like my mentor at the time. Okay. He was around a lot when I first got started in like 80, something like that. He was in Cincinnati a lot. And he was there doing a play. And he would come to the club that just opened up there. And which was one of the rare ones. At a time in this country, there was a club in Cincinnati, 1 and 2 in Chicago and New York and LA. That was it. Okay. So it was amazing. But yeah, Will Durst could hammer out some pretty. But he was always very challenging of the audience. He did a lot of political stuff, and he's the one that actually warned me. Right. He was like, look, it's hard enough, kid, in this business, but if you're going to go out there and really challenge the audience, and he said, for Christ's sakes, if you're going to do political stuff, plan to be writing every day. Right. Because, and he goes, when Reagan goes out of office, I'm in trouble. Right. Because I got an hour on him, so he was actually a big influence, and he was somebody that could do it rather well.
I mentioned Bill Maher a moment ago. Is there anybody on the comedy scene now locally or television that you think handles religious satire, making fun of religion? Does it well?
There's so many good ones out there. Patton Oswalt does a tremendous job.
Right.
Of course, I came up with Bill Hicks also.
Right.
Who obviously would tackle all kinds of material. Yeah. He loved to challenge the audience.
And Bill Hicks sadly passed away at a very young age, 30, 31, something like that.
Yes.
I'm too young to have seen him. I only know him from videos and documentaries. But it is said that had he not had his untimely demise, he would have been Bill Maher.
Yeah, I could have seen him in a podcast, and because he loved to smoke, so I can imagine it, just this little studio with a room full of smoke and him and a microphone. But he was great. You know, he was born to do it.
Times change, so it might be a little unfair, but I was once watching a Bill Hicks video, just one of his concerts, and of course hilarious. But I got into that thinking formulaically, sorry for not expressing myself well, from a certain sector of comedy mentors, you'll be told you have to get 6 laughs a minute. And I don't think Bill Hicks got 6 laughs a minute. No. Because he would take his time to go through his material.
Right. You know what? I think that can be offset by hard laughs, too. He would get very big hard laughs. And it's all in what the audience will go with you. Right. And obviously 6 laughs a minute is just like feeding them little nuggets and they're coming with you, you know. Yeah. But somebody like Bill could be very compelling along the way. Yes. He could just drive the audience attention, and then you get such a hard laugh. Right. They stay with him with the next one. It's all about trust, you know, when you do stand-up. The audience trusts you. Okay. There's nothing worse than going a long way and then fizzle at the end. I mean, they're just, you start into another one, and they're looking at their watch, especially these days. They got everything in the world to look at in the audience. They sit there and look at their phones. And what's worse, be on stage and you're doing a bit and you look down and somebody's looking at you on YouTube doing a bit. And you're like, if you just give it a second, I'll do that for you. So.
I saw a headliner open for Brett Ernst, who was very nice to me and very hilarious. And he's kind of a storyteller. So he's also not like a 6 laughs a minute. He's go through his material with confidence and get big laughs along the way. But he has this ending bit, which I won't even go into, but audience members started heckling him to do the bit. You know, do the bit. Come on, just do it all. And the guy was very drunk.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And so it turned into this like ugly, ironic situation where Brett couldn't do the bit because he was being interrupted by the guy who was yelling at him to do the bit. And it was like a 10-minute exchange.
I saw Goldthwait go through that once. He does an impression of Bono. Okay. That is incredible. It's very famous. Okay. But I had to watch him one time go, will you shut the F up? I'll get to Bono. I've got this hour I got to do first. You know, because it's funny that when you get a certain measure of fame and they know your bits, that's what happens. Right. You know, your own bits get in your way up there.
Well, let me ask you one more question. I've been ending most of these interviews with just this very generic sounding question. Mm-hmm. We've been kind of talking about religious satire, dancing around it, bringing it up. Is there anything else about it that you would just want to say? Anything I didn't get to? Any comedians, any jokes, any advice or observations? For religious satire.
You know what? Here's the thing. I'm all for comedy. As soon as you say there isn't a place for something or it's tough, somebody comes along and finds a way to do it. And truthfully, comedy's all about communication. I'm all for it. Right. So anything that truly gets a laugh. Okay. And you don't have to get a laugh 6 times a minute. You just have to be compelling up there and be interesting. And you know what? Anymore, to be truthful, be authentic. Right. Because people follow an authentic person.
I've had two or three comedians I've interviewed for this podcast have specifically said the reason they don't, put effort into religious satire is because they're not religious people, one way or the other. They don't have a strong feeling about religion, true or false. Mm-hmm. So it's not even a question of being like true to themselves. It's just who they are.
Right. Yeah. Right? Sure. You know what? I still consider myself a religious person, but I don't go along with any particular religion. Right. Does that make sense?
Sure.
I mean, I still find myself in prayer and meditation and thinking about those things. Sure. I just don't put it out there to be laughed with or at, so. Okay. It's just all private to me, and that's the way I keep it.
All right. Well, that sounds like a good note to end on. Thank you very much, Chili, for spending a few minutes with me.
Thanks very much, Doctor.
Okay.
Comedy is communication. Of course, it seems so obvious, yet how many beginners take the time to really think about it that way? Or, for my purposes with religious satire, how does recognizing comedy as communication apply to religious satire? It raises almost like a paradox about communicating serious points about such a serious topic through such a seemingly frivolous medium as comedy. I also appreciated Chili's behind-the-scenes take on Jay Leno, and talking about Richard Pryor being able to do both reality and fantasy. Hey, thanks, Chili. Before we finish up today, I'd like to make a quick trip over to the Rabbit Hutch. Me and my wife are rabbit enthusiasts, and in the last couple of episodes I shared the sad news of the passing of Kevin Bacon, our rabbit, not the actor. Now I greet you with some good news. This past fall we got a new baby rabbit called Kelvin. We wanted to wait a couple months to give Newton a chance to getting used to being without Kevin before trying to bring in a new rabbit. You know, rabbits have to go through a bonding period. In the wild, they have a very hierarchical structure. So we brought in little baby Kelvin. He's a Holland Lop with black and white spots. I'll put a photo of him up on our Facebook page. You can leave a message, tell us how cute the baby Kelvin is. But when you bring a new rabbit into your house, you have to go through a whole dating ritual. You have to keep them apart. You have to put them together for short periods. They have to get used to each other. And one thing rabbits do, which if you've never had rabbits, you won't know this, is they display different types of dominance behavior. They're trying to establish who's the alpha bunny. And one of the ways they do that is by what can only be euphemistically referred to as humping. Yep, they'll just lay on top of each other and sort of force the other one down. And Newton is the older rabbit and is actually bigger, a couple pounds bigger, and was always dominating Kelvin. Kelvin would actually try to fight back. Sometimes Kelvin would try to climb on top of Newton and dominate him. So you give them periods together to explore this dominance behavior and to get used to each other. And then after a couple of weeks, you let them spend more and more time together. And now, I'll tell you more about Kelvin and Newton in future episodes, but I will just say they are now living together. They have their own cages, but their cages are open, and they share their food, and they share their cages, and they spend time snuggling together. Anyway, I've noticed that one of the last uses for old-fashioned paper newspapers is lining the bottom of rabbit cages. That's what we do. And a funny thing happens while doing that. I come across a lot of headlines. It's like I've gone back to reading the newspaper, but only at the bottom of rabbit cages. And there's one type of headline that really stands out to me. I see a lot of historical and factual misinformation out there about religion in newspapers and other news outlets because of the way most reporters treat stories about religion as soft journalism. Because of that, without even doing too much digging, you can find a lot of actual either questionable ideas or indeed factual errors in some articles on religion. Whenever I find any examples of these, I have to set the record straight because it's good for our souls to know things. And so what did I find today at the bottom of the Rabbit Hutch? Something a little different, so stay with me for a second. An article from the St. Louis Dispatch with the headline, "Even as Alternative Medicine Businesses Grow, Skeptics Persist," by Deborah D. Bass. I want to give Bass some credit in the sense that she tried to give like a balanced view. She gave the view of alternative medicine practitioners, especially these salt rooms, and then also explained why skeptics have their, concerns. But I found the headline troubling because if you are a skeptic, this sentence doesn't make sense. It's a non sequitur. Whether or not alternative medicine businesses grow have nothing to do with their veracity, efficacy, accuracy, or anything else like that. So to say, even as alternative medicine businesses grow, skeptics persist is already misleading. Let me tell you more about the article. It's about a popular form of alternative medicine these days called salt rooms. If you haven't heard of this, it's a kind of therapy where you spend like $100 an hour to sit in a room with pink Himalayan salt bricks. They call this halotherapy, and proponents claim that it's a good treatment for allergies, asthma, stress and anxiety, and pretty much anything else, lice, monkeypox, cooties, whatever. They say it'll clear up. Hey, when I first heard the word halotherapy, it made me think of the game Halo. Except that in Halo you get to run around killing aliens, while in halotherapy you just kill your time, your bank account, and your chance to use real medicine. So here are some of the things I found in this article. First of all, the main ingredient is salt. And salt can be used for making crappy foods taste a little better, but I've never heard of it having any meaningful medicinal qualities. In this article, they interviewed a guy called Clay Jurassic, who has a chain of salt rooms in the St. Louis area, and the guy himself said there's no medical evidence that this therapy does anything, except that his clients really love it. That's it. His clients love it, and at $100 an hour, his wife loves it, and his accountant loves it, and I bet his coke dealer loves it too. I'll let you insert your own Jurassic Park joke here. I want to tell Dr. Clay that in science, anecdotes are not evidence. If anecdotes were evidence, you could be like porn star Jenny McCarthy, who said she got her PhD on Google. If anecdotes were evidence, you could get all your prescriptions on Facebook. Thank you, Dr. Zuckerberg. It's actually hard to find any actual doctors who will endorse halotherapy. For example, some people with asthma, like myself, some people with asthma like to use halotherapy. But the American Asthma Association on their website straight up says they do not recommend it, it has no benefits, and it might have negative side effects. Of course, you can't blame the American Asthma Association. They're in the pocket of Big Pepper. Now, I don't mean to rub salt into the wound. Oops, bad Jerry. But the article presents only one actual doctor who has ever publicly endorsed salt rooms. And it's a Russian doctor, and her name is, with apologies to my Russian friends, Dr. Alina V. Chervinskaya. And not only is she a Russian doctor, she is also the person who invented salt room therapies. Funny fact, Chervinskaya is Russian for conflict of interest. You know, alternative medicine, in general, does not like being called alternative medicine anymore. My guess is that it sounds a little too bullshitty. So now they call themselves complementary medicine. That's the new buzzword for alternative medicine. As if a good compliment would cure what ails ya. You don't need to go to chemo. Just a hearty, "You look fabulous," might cure your cancer. Alternative medicine, complementary medicine, I don't care what they call it. I wish they'd stop using the word medicine. Once you put the word alternative in front of it, it's no longer medicine. Just like you wouldn't eat anything called alternative meat. Unless it was deep fried at a carnival, then all bets are off. Hey, I guess they might deserve credit for trying. Maybe we should call it participation trophy medicine. I once got a participation trophy for field day in the 3rd grade. Does that make me an alternative athlete? I found this article in the business section of a newspaper. But because halotherapy seems based on personal revelation and attractive hyperbole, it probably should have been in the religion section of the paper with other faith-based activities. In fact, instead of newspapers having sections like national, international, and local news, they could have sections for facts and reality, and separate sections for fantasy news, for Trump voters. Some of these alternative medicine practitioners will sometimes sue people who criticize them and speak out against their hokum and bunkum and nonsense. That's right, I said hokum and bunkum. Famously, chiropractors once sued the American Medical Association for restraint of trade. So I just want to say, if there are any complementary medicine practitioners within the sound of my voice, please sue me. Your services are bullshit and my career needs a bump. Hey, if salt had any medicinal qualities, you would see sick people trying to lick the road in the middle of winter. And I've never seen that, so that alone makes me suspicious. And finally, if you think sitting in a salt room for $100 an hour sounds great, for just the price of a tequila, or maybe 3, we can find young men and women in every bar in America every weekend who will sprinkle salt on your rear and lick it off for you. And that sounds like some salt therapy we can all get behind. In fact, with the cost of healthcare in this country, that sounds like a pretty damn good idea. Road salt and tequilas for everyone. And that's what I found at the bottom of the Rabbit Hutch today. And when I see examples of misinformation, I have to speak out. I'm not trying to ruin anybody else's good time, but hey, it's not about your dogma, it's my karma. and I'm all about spreading the love. Having said that, it just remains for me to thank Chili Challis for being our guest today on the Comical Heathen. I want to thank our rabbits for inspiring me to continue to read newspaper headlines. I want to thank my friend Jeff Geddet for his technical assistance and for providing additional written material. And that lovely Bach organ music you hear during the show is played by my friend Mark Bell. If you enjoy our music, you can purchase Mark's CD online. I want to thank you for listening. Look us up on iTunes, look up our website, send us comments on Facebook, and I hope you'll join us again. I'm Dr. Jerry Jaffe. Thank you.
B-22, B-22.